Good afternoon. Probably have a few more people trickling in here as we get started. My name is Amanda, and thanks for coming to another one of my webinars. Typically do these webinars every 2 weeks or so, and I know they generally fall on a weekday afternoon, so that's not ideal for everyone, but just a quick reminder that you can always watch the recording later. If you can't make it live and you've registered anyway, you're going to get a copy of the recording. So if you're here with us live, fantastic, and if you're watching some evening later on, having a tea or a coffee. Good for you, and be sure to sign up for any of our future webinars. A little bit of housekeeping: you'll find that you don't have any audio options throughout the webinar, but there is a chat, and I am monitoring that. So if you have any questions as we go along, if you want to see something a little more in depth or have a specific question about something that we're looking at, feel free to throw your questions in there. And of course, you can always reach out to our support team at any time. We have a dedicated support team for the Goalline platform that's available for live chat, email, and phone. For live chat and phone, the hours are Monday to Friday, 8 to 8 Eastern Standard Time, but you can email cases in to our support team anytime. So today's topic is a super fun one. So I have called this webinar our website tips and tricks. As many of you might know, or if you're newer to the Goalline platform, you may not know, I've been with Goalline for quite some time now, a little over 10 years that I've been working on the Goalline platform. And so in that time, just like a lot of you who use the system, you get to know certain little tips and tricks and things that you like. So I wanted to set up this webinar and share a lot of those tips and tricks that are really just kind of helpful for organizing your information, and we'll provide a bit of an overview of how information is displayed and what kind of settings are going to be involved. So for example, a menu on your website, whether you have the gold or the silver layout, which we'll kind of identify the differences there. Regardless of what site you have, when it comes to your menu, how is that menu going to behave when you have teams or divisions or leagues in your menu? How is it going to look if you put standings directly in your menu and things like that? So there's going to be a lot of things that you might learn how you might want to reorganize your team groupings or your division groupings so that your public menu display is going to be nice and simple, easy to navigate, and so that you know where everything is. So I already mentioned just a little bit here. We're looking at the gold layout. This is my demo site that I use all the time for all of these webinars. I like it quite a bit. I am a fan of the gold layout, and the reason I like it is that it's very simple. The graphics are customized for you, your background's customized for you, and everything else is just kind of fit into a nice template that doesn't change a whole lot over time. I can obviously control my menu items and I can add news articles. And as I manage my Goalline system, it's going to update all kinds of other things for me automatically. So things like my scrolling game center, as games get scheduled and reported, that's going to automatically keep this updated. So I don't have to do that independently. Upcoming games modules, practice modules, latest scores, these kind of things. When you have these modules on your site, they are constantly being updated just by the virtue of you doing your day-to-day operation within your sport organization. So reporting games and scheduling games is going to keep pushing all of that content to be fresh. And there's all kinds of really fun stuff when it comes to statistics and things like that, especially on our silver layout, which I'll hop over to now. And this is another demo site that I use quite a bit, but there's so many examples of how you can make these layouts your own when you are managing your site. So again, we have our menu here that can be customized, and we'll go into all the little tricks on how to manage that. And then when it comes to modules on the silver site, you do have a lot more flexibility with how you can put things in. But just to point out, things like statistics leaders, goals leaders, points leaders, whatever your sport is, there's going to be some amount of statistics modules that you can throw in here. And again, all you're doing is scheduling games and reporting game scores, but that's going to keep the content fresh and populated on the website, and your players are going to be able to see, oh, look, I'm number one in points, or I have the best save percentage in the league, and things like that. So lots of really cool things that you can do. The silver layout is mainly a drag and drop module system. and we'll take a look at how you manipulate those. And then whether you have gold or silver, your menu is really where we're going to focus mainly on, how do I get things where I want them? So one of the first things that I always recommend to folks is to create a web page in your site called About Us, or about whatever your association's called, or information, just something where there's an about page that people can go to if they don't know where else to go first. If I don't know what I want to click on, I'm going to probably start by looking at the About page. And when you look at that, I can I have set it up here so that I have my venue listing, my email sign up if you want to get my newsletters, another subpage here. I've put my standard item for news archives and executives under here, and these allow me to tuck things away in a way that keeps my menu nice and organized, so I don't have to have a million items in the menu, and I can keep it nice and streamlined. So About Us, or sometimes we'll see things like links, and have various links listed out here. So there's lots of things we can do. And I'm going to show you a couple of tricks on how to manage web pages in a way that's going to help you out with that kind of management. And there is going to be just one very slight difference between the gold and the silver when it comes to your web pages or your menus. And that main difference is when you have the silver layout, you can have the drop down that comes from your menu, but it can also include an additional fly out. And that works for web pages as well as your divisions and your team groupings. And I'll show you a little bit more of what I mean when we get into the back end there. But I just wanted to point that out here as well. We're going to hop back and forth a little bit between the admin and the public side, just so we can make sure that that relationship between what you're doing in the admin side, we can see that relationship right away on the public side of the site, because everything you do in Goalline, as soon as you make a save of your changes, it's going to automatically be updated right away. There's no delay. There's no turnaround time for any of that. It just is automatically going to be updated. So when you're logged into your Goalline control panel, ideally, if you are kind of the overall website administrator for your organization, you should have permission for everything we're going to touch on here today. If you are an administrator that's more of a webmaster, or your job is more communications, you may not have all of these permissions. And depending on what you like out of this webinar today, you may want to contact someone else in your organization who has permissions that you don't have, just in case you might want to move some things around. So I'm going to start with showing you the web page function. When we're in the Goalline control panel, whether it's the master menu, league, or team menu, you're going to have the website option in here so that you can manage things that are related to the website. So this is how I get content onto my site, but it's also where I'm going to find a certain amount of the settings that go into what I need to do. So in the website content section, we can see I can create news articles, I can add images and files that I can then link to, either in a news article or on a web page or even in an email announcement. This is also where you can go to manage photo galleries if you've enabled that. Your ads can go up here, your ticker announcements. As tournaments, we often turn on a website slideshow for tournaments. It's great for hospitality suites to have it kind of rotating through your standings and things. Manage web pages and create web pages are going to show us how can we create a web page. When I go to manage web pages, it's going to list for me all the web pages that I have, and it's going to show me where they are. So as we look at that public side of our menu, you can see that there's a horizontal menu, and it's got a top row and a second row. And then the other option that we have, of course, is that things don't have to be displayed on the menu at all. I can have web pages that I've created that are not on the website at all. They're not something you can navigate to using the menu, but they still exist and they can be available through the link, because all these web pages, regardless of where you've chosen to place them, they are going to have a public URL. So if I just go and edit one of these pages, for example, I can always click to view the page on the site. As soon as I've saved it for the very first time and it's got a title, I can save that on the site. So if I click that, it's going to show me that page. There's nothing displayed on the menu, or that's actually the content in my page. So that's a really informative web page because this page is not actually displayed on my menu at all. It's not something I can navigate to using the tools around here. So this page would not be displayed on the menu, is the content that we have there. So what this does is it lets me preview that page, and the URL I'll just hop back over. The URL here is the URL that I would use if I wanted to create a link to that page from anywhere else. Lots of different use cases for how you might want to use that kind of thing. But once you have web pages that are not displayed on the menu, as soon as you view them, you can see that URL. If you do have a primary domain associated with your site, which means just in addition to the Goalline subdomain that you'd have, it would be at the primary domain / that page ID. So your primary domain is still what would be used on your web pages there. So when we're looking at a web page, there's lots of different stuff here, and we're going to go into more detail on how we can manage things up here. But I just want to point out that placement. So my placement is in a drop down that I can select from. And this gives me that same kind of look as what we saw on the first page, where I can put it in directly into my top menu first row. So if I pick this, it's going to put it into my top menu first row. I can also choose to put it in my top menu second row. I just don't have anything in there right now. And then I can choose not displayed on menu. When I have pages that already exist, I can choose one of those pages as well. So I could choose to place this page under about instead of having it just not displayed on the menu. And if I do save that change, that's going to update that automatically. So now this page is going to be existing as a sub page of that about page. So now if I refresh over here, we can see that drills page is right here. Another trick that I like to talk about is how do I put them in the order that I want? And I can do that on two levels. So I can order the menu itself from left to right. And then when it comes to sub pages, I can reorder those sub pages as well. I'm going to click on this reorder, and you're going to see that there's multiple options in here that weren't displayed over there. And that's because my reorder gives me an option to reorder everything in that submenu, not just the web pages, because there are some standard menu items in there as well. My venues, my email sign up, my news, etc. So I can reorder if I want this to be actually at the bottom of the list instead of at the top. I can reorder that, confirm that order, and now that order is what's going to apply when I look at both my listing here and when I refresh over here, we're going to see that it is now at the bottom of that list. So reorder lets me reorder all of the sub pages, but if I go ahead and I want to reorder the whole top menu first row, I can click that as well. Again, it's going to include my web pages in addition to my Goalline standard items. And standard items are things that are just built in to the Goalline system. You don't have to build a web page for teams and standings because those are just items that exist. So I can reorder everything in my menu however I want to see it. If I want teams to be over at the end, I can put teams at the end, and that's going to, again, update the order that we see things from left to right. So right now, teams is here. If I refresh, it's going to be over here. So it didn't remove anything, it just moved it to a different spot. So you can have full control over that left to right, as well as full control of how you see the sub pages to that page. Hopping over to the silver site, it's going to be exactly the same thing, but you do have that extra option to select basically a sub page to a sub page. So when I go into manage web pages here, I don't have enough of them. So let's go and create one. So I can create a web page, and I'm going to just call this a sub page for about, and this is some content, and I want to choose my placement. So I'm going to put this in about us. And when I save that, it's just automatically going to be up to date. Again, everything is just in real time. So now About Us has a sub page. If I go and create another web page, let's be real creative and call it a sub page, and put more content on that page. And now when I select my placement options, I can actually choose to place it as subpage of About, which makes it really neat. So you can create these really nice information centers on your site. The more content you have, the more important it is to organize it in a way that your folks can find it. So now we can see our About has a subpage, that has a subpage, and I can have any number of subpages that come down in here. There's no limit to the number of web pages you can create or subpages that you can have in there. That is, of course, the limit of how they fly out as far as the menu displaying those subpages. Some other fun stuff to talk about when it comes to web pages is let's go back in here. Let's edit our about page. Some fun things that you can do, and this is something that I show it a lot in my demos. I don't often mention it, but le système de Goalline est disponible en français aussi. So if you need French content, if you are if you're in Quebec or if you're in New Brunswick and you have a bilingual membership, you can create bilingual content that will translate so that when I'm looking at the page and I want to see it in English, I see it in English. If I want to see it in French, I see your French content as opposed to any Google Translate options that might happen there. My Goalline site does have our French and English tools available, so I can switch this and view the site in French, and it will translate everything that has been translated in the system to French for us. Let me see here. Look at that, encore en français. Let's see. Oh, I'm just going to check on another screen here because I think I might have turned that off on my thing. Apologies for that. But the language and that language toggle does work inside as well. So I think I turned off the setting here that lets me do that. But when you're looking at your site, you're able to select your language in here. So anytime you're putting in content, whether it's a news article or a web page, if you've asked us to turn on these translation tools, you will see an English and a French option in here. If you don't have those tools enabled and you don't need them, then that's fine. But if that sounds like something you could take advantage of, let our support team know and we can turn that on for you. So the English is always going to be the primary, even if you do want things translated into French, just to let you know that that's available. And then when it comes to the content, you're able to configure your content however you want. What we call here is a WYSIWYG editor, which stands for what you see is what you get. So the way that you configure your content here is almost exactly the way it's going to look on the public side of the site. So if we look at our about page, we're going to see that that's what it looks like. It says table, and here's a table. I was doing this as a little trick here to show my trick for tables that I really like using, which is to use a table so that your content is really well formatted and very well spaced without actually having it look like it's in a table. So the way that I did that, if I right click on my table here, I can look at table properties and I can create, however many rows, however many columns, the size in general that I want it to be, the center and alignment, but then it's the border size that actually makes the table itself invisible. So if I use a border size of 0, it means that the border has no size at all. If I change that to be 1 or basically any number other than 0, it's going to update that. So it's going to actually show that border. And if I save that change, we'll see that change reflected over here right away when we look at this same web page. So now this table actually has a border. So when you're using your web pages to go and update content, you can keep it really tidy and have it nice and organized into columns or rows, different ways to break that up, and you have lots of flexibility with that. You can also put some kind of fancy things in. If I want to just horizontal line to break up the content, I can do that, and I don't have to be all silly with using underscores or hyphens to try and make that horizontal line, because this will just automatically create a nice broken down line that's going to allow you to kind of create more headers within the web page, especially for those pages that might have a lot of content on them. I don't know, format them in a way that is nice and easy to navigate. This section of content is over. We're moving into a new section of content here. Another great way to use tables and use some of these, this concept of having lots of content on the page, so you can have kind of content 1 and then another nice pretty horizontal line and content 2. Something you can do is actually create your own contents or table of contents. Really, you can come up and say, I want to go to, if this is an FAQ page, for example, I want to go to question 1. I can call this an anchor. And when I use that as an anchor, I can call to that anchor using a link up here. So the way that I do that is I'm going to use content. I'm going to highlight what I want. to be an anchor, and I'm going to go to the flag option here, and I'm going to call it something. So this is going to be FAQ question 1. So when I say okay to that, it doesn't change really much what happens to content 1 itself. But now if I want this to go to link down here, I can use a link. And instead of doing it to another website or another URL or an email address, I can use the anchor option. So link to an anchor in the text is one of my options. And then it's going to show me what anchors do I have on this page that I can use. So I'm going to say FAQ Q1. And now that's going to be updated. So if I click here, it's going to bring that content to the top of the page. Now, there might not be enough content for that to really kind of demonstrate, but you get the idea that, you know, if you have one of those frequently asked questions page listings, you might want people to search the questions and then just go to the answer, right? So if I click Q1, it does want to bring it up because it wants to bring this anchor right here as far up to the top of the screen as possible for me. So that's a really great trick for things like your frequently asked questions, or you know, your values, or even, you know, about your staff, things like that, because you may have an executive or board, but you may also have a staff listing. So there's lots of different ways that you can take advantage of that kind of tool. Lots of other stuff that comes in when you're building a web page. So I'll just point out again a few of the items in the WYSIWYG editor here. I get asked this question all the time: is how can I you know, make a header or have something be bold or change the sizing and the font? The first thing I'll say, you can't change the font. The font is going to be standard, so you don't have an option to change the font to like Comic Sans or Times New Roman. Your font is going to be the Goalline default font. However, there's lots of style options and size options available. And the style options are just like what you would be used to with a word processor, where you can make things larger, you can make things headings, you can make things, you know, title text or subtext and things like that, so that you are able to really update the way that the words are going to appear, but they are going to be in the Goalline standard font. The size is another thing where you can make it smaller, bigger, larger, extra large, that kind of thing. And you just want that to kind of flow together. And the reason that we don't have that font option to change your font specifically to all kinds of different fonts is just the way that it displays, not just on different browsers, but on different screens and different resolutions and things. So the Goalline platform does have a standard consistent font for all of the content that goes into it, and just much more visually appealing that way, as opposed to having, you know, Times New Roman on one page and then Arial on another, and so on. The other options here, these are all fairly familiar things. Special characters, don't see that one used a whole lot, but it is very important that you know that you can access that. Numbered lists and bulleted lists. We already talked about the horizontal line and tables. Anchor text and links go together, but links also, as I briefly mentioned, the default is going to be that it's going to go to a URL, so another web page. That could be any URL as well. It doesn't have to be within your Goalline site. It doesn't have to be an external site. You could be linking to any URL you want. When you use the URL type, and this is another question I get asked a lot, if you use a URL that is, let's say, a subdomain of something, and then that domain changes, that URL may need to be updated. So, and I use that example. My site right now is at site 1465. And if I updated my Goalline subdomain to be site, or, you know, to be Amanda's site.goalline.ca, if I'm using hard-coded links here to site 1465, they don't update automatically. So just keep that in mind when it comes to linking to URLs. You do want to make sure that if you're linking to something that might frequently change, maybe linking to it on one of those web pages isn't the best idea. It just depends on what kind of content you're using. But URL type is the first type there. Anchor is another option. Email is another option. So email address, the subject and default and body, you can default that content. This really, I think, used to be a super popular method of having people contact an organization. But more and more folks like me who don't use an actual external email program may not find that to be all that helpful, because I don't have a default email program. If I click on an email address, it's not going to open Outlook for me because I don't have Outlook. So that is something you can certainly do. Linking to an email address is mostly just going to be used for the email address itself. But that's one of the specific types here. And then the other one is linking to a file uploaded to Goalline. As I mentioned earlier, you can upload files into your website tool and then link to those files. And if it's a PDF, it's probably just going to open in my browser, but maybe it's a Word doc or an Excel doc, and it's just going to download to my computer. When you want to link to a file, the file does have to be uploaded, and you'll see all your files in whatever categories you have listed. So that people will be able to get that file. So if it's a flyer or a waiver document or a policies manual, things like that that people want to be able to access, you can link those as files into any of your web pages so that the content is easy to access. When it comes to especially your URL, there is an option to set a target. So there are some advanced options here. The target by default is going to be really just nothing, but the link, you may not want it to open in the browser that they're using. You might want it to open in a new tab. To open something in a new tab, you want to say new window with the bracket blank option right here. If you want it to be a new window altogether, you would select new window entirely, or if you don't mind for it to be just in the same browser tab, you can just leave it as no set. If it is a link within your own Goalline site, you don't necessarily need much of a target, but if it is a link that goes external, I always recommend that you use it in a new tab so that it opens and they're not navigating away from Goalline. They're just going to be opening that new content in a new tab. So they're not going to leave your website. Other options in here is inserting an image and inserting YouTube videos. YouTube videos can be embedded by using the YouTube link here, and then you can adjust a little bit when it comes to the sizing of that and how it's going to display on the site. Inserting an image. The first thing I usually get asked when it comes to inserting an image is what's with all the Latin? So with Goalline, this is just some preview text. It's pretty common to see this in the type of editor that we have here. But the first thing you want to do if I want to put an image on this web page, I'm going to browse my server. I'm going to browse the server for all the images that have already been uploaded to my Goalline site. And this is just going to be restricted to what you see on your Goalline site. So you can select the image. If it's already here, you can just double click and pick that image to be the image that you want to show. Or if it's not here yet, you can upload. And doing this is going to take you through the typical process of browsing your computer for the image, uploading it, and then again, once you've selected that image, you just double click it. And it's going to show you a bit of a preview here. Your width and height are going to show here as far as what the pixels are for that exact image. It's going to be locked. So I could say that I want the width of this image to be 300, and it's going to reduce the height appropriately. You can unlock the aspect ratio, but obviously that might get a little wonky if you're changing the width and the height separately and the aspect ratio is not locked. So just keep that in mind. If I make it 400, it proportionately makes the height a little bit different. You can add borders and things like that to it as well as kind of more advanced options. But typically that's really all you'll do is you're going to browse your server, double click your image, and then say okay, and it's going to insert that image into your web page. So now this image is just here ready for me to put content around it, under it, or I can even create, I want to go other side of that. There we go. I can link to anything from any content. So I can create links, as we already saw with using the anchor example, using text, but I can also link to an image. So just clicking the image to highlight it and make that image a link. So when folks click on that image, it's going to take them to that link. So some really good stuff that you can do with your web pages so you can really organize your content in a way that makes sense to you. So now that we've looked a lot at the web page configuration options here, that all of those same concepts that we just looked at are going to play into a lot of other items that you can do within Goalline. So I'm going to return to the website portion. And I'm going to click on events. So if I want to create an event, I will create, oh, sorry, wrong type of events for this. Those events are in our scheduling section. I apologize. My demo site has some beta features on it here. So add, edit, delete events is in here somewhere. Goodness gracious. I'm going to look for it using Control F. That's my favorite. Control F is my go-to. Oh, goodness. I don't know where it went. It might be because I have the wrong feature enabled, but let's go over here. This will be a little easier. Add, edit, delete events. This is the way that it looks for most people. So with an event, you give it a title, you give it dates, times, if that's applicable, and then you see another area where you can use the same WYSIWYG editor to do your descriptions. So when it comes to creating an event listing, not only does this become information that people can see on your website when they're looking at your events, but it has a date and a time associated, and I'm able to send that out as an email. So if I'm creating an event, we're going to have a charity event next month. I can create that event in here, really configure the content very specifically so that all the information you might need to know about that event is here, and then email that out to all your players, parents, coaches, people signed up on your email subscription list, all your referees, and then save that. It will save the event, publish it to your master schedule. It will email it out to everyone you selected, and it will be listed in your event listing wherever you've chosen to place that into your menu. Another one we'll look at in the website side of things is going to be ads. When you create ads for your site, whether you're in the Goalline ad program or not, which means whether we're serving additional Google ad choices on your site or not, you are able to create your own ads in various placements. So to create an ad, again, it uses a title. The title is a admin side only, so the public doesn't see the title of this. So usually it'd be things like, Tim Hortons sponsor 1, or McDonald's sponsor 2, whatever makes sense to based on what the ad is. So you create the title and then you create the ad. We have the same options here to edit. Typically, an ad is going to be a lot more simple. It's just going to be an image and a link, but you can use your ad space for all kinds of different things. Whatever makes sense for you to use your ad space for, you can, and you can place it on all kinds of different pages. So as we scroll down, we can see, where can I place this? I can choose to place it everywhere that I can place ads. Or I can just choose to place it on my homepage. Or maybe they're a sponsor for my U15 AAA and I want it on all of my U15 AAA specific pages, but maybe not on any of these other pages. If you have leagues and teams, like a lot of organizations do, you would have the option to select team specific pages here as well, and those teams would be listed out. If it's somebody who sponsors all of your standings, you could have it show on all of your league standings pages, and your league statistics pages, whatever makes sense. So your placement options for your ads are pretty granular when it comes to where you can place them. Another trick I like to talk about is if you have lots of ads all showing on similar pages and you want one of them to show more often, you can create the same ad and just duplicate it and have, Tim Hortons 1, 2, and 3 as 3 separate ads, and then have a Wendy's ad go in there. And then all 4 of those ads can be rotating through, but it's just going to appear like Tim Hortons is there more frequently. When you're selling ad space, that's often something you'll want to do because you'll want to know how many page impressions are they going to get, what percentage of the time should the Tim Hortons ad display compared to other ads. So when you're creating your ads, you can just create the same ad multiple times and have it on the same pages so that it shows more frequently than other ads, because ads placed in the same placements will share their time. Let's see here. So the next thing we'll look at with our website tools is going to be our ticker announcements. Ticker announcements are things that they will scroll across. Let me just see if we have one going here. I think I have one on my page. Yeah. So I have a return to play ticker announcement coming here. A lot of times you'll see this as, registrations open now. Go get registered. Your ticker announcement is something where you're just creating a small announcement that's going to scroll across the screen. So it's not a news article. It's just an announcement. It's like special news, welcome to the club, this new staff member, new technical director, things like that might make sense to put up there. Another one we see pretty frequently is a lot of folks will use that to post that fields are closed today. If you're baseball or soccer or an outdoor sport and it's rained, you might have to close the fields. Lots of other ways that you're going to manage how you're going to communicate the rain out. But using the ticker announcement is a nice quick way to make sure that information is right on your homepage and there's not going to be any confusion about that. So we've taken a look at our web pages. Oh, you know what? I didn't. I skipped 2 items in our web pages, and I think that's really important to go back to. So, web pages. When you create a web page, it is essentially designed to be placed publicly, but we already talked about how you don't actually have to have it in your menu, so it doesn't have to be super available to the public. But what if it should be available in your menu, but only some people should see it? You can password protect your web pages with whatever password you want. I see this a lot with executive board minutes, where the board minutes should be available to a subset of folks who are on the board and have a password. So if I'm creating a web page to house all the meeting minutes, then I want to make sure that I password protect that so that only our executive is able to access that. So I would share this password with my executive listing so that they can access that web page and see the content on that web page. So creating that password protection, it should be available for you. If you don't see that available on your Create web page, that's something we can easily just flick on for you by contacting the support team. It should be on for you, but if it's not, our support team can definitely turn that on for you very, very quickly there, just with a quick question for us. The other really cool item that you can use in your web pages is just a full-on redirect, which basically ignores content. You don't need to put content on a page. If I want this to be my sponsor link, and I want it to just be a link to my sponsor, and this is a button that I want to place in my menu somewhere, whether the placement still matters, so I can still place it anywhere that I want it to be placed. Let's go and make it actually a sub page of that one, just for fun. So we'll do goalline.ca is going to be where that goes. Now, because this goalline.ca is not part of my website, I want it to open in a new tab. So I'll select new tab and let that open in a new tab. If I wanted to take over the page that you're on, I would just leave it and select direct link. So if I say, I don't think I gave it a title. Yes, I did. So I have a title there. So let's go ahead and save that. So when we look over here now, we've got an About Us, a subpage, and now 2 of these. And this one is a sponsor link that opens in a new tab and redirects to the goalline.ca website. All right. So placement, subpages, passwords, redirects, we got all of it covered. All right. So we're going to head back over here and look at a couple of our standard menu settings. So I've referred to these a few times. And what's really important about standard menu settings is that really they are going to help you control everything else that goes into your menu in addition to your own user created content. Standard menu settings is going to be divided in a similar way. So we see top menu first row, second row, not displayed at all, and then we also have the option to place it below another page. That's why I always recommend creating that About Us page first, because it lets you have a place to put these items. So I have a bunch of web pages that I could choose, and if this is, if I want the referee login to be under my referee corner, I can do that instead of having it be directly in my top menu second row. So that's a choice that you can make. You can choose wherever you want to place any of your items. There is a limit of items and characters that can go into your menu, which is yet again why it's important to organize it in a nice tidy way that's easy to navigate, but that isn't too overwhelming with items. So this is one option you can do. Another thing that's really great to be able to do in your standard menu settings is use your own terminology. So Goalline's going to use its own terminology for a lot of different things. Leagues is a big one. Executive is another one. So if your organization doesn't have an executive, it probably has a board of directors, or maybe if maybe it's staff listing. Whatever it is that makes sense to you to call your executive, you can edit the title. It never changes what the item actually is, but it changes the title so that it's the terminology your membership is used to seeing. So if I don't have an executive, I actually have a board. Or maybe it's a committee, I can do that. So I can change that to be board instead of executive, and that's just going to update the public title that's used when I see that in my menu. So now that I've updated that, instead of executive, it's a board, but it still takes me to my executive listing. When I've saved my standard menu settings, I'm going to get the opportunity again, just like we did with web pages, to reorder from left to right what items are going to be in there. There's a few items here that you'll notice don't have the option to be placed as subpages or to be placed in the second row. The reason for that is if they come inherently with their own drop down, like teams, standings, divisions, and leagues might, they just can't be placed in certain areas. On a silver layout, so let's hop over into the silver one because there's just, I think, a slight difference there. Yes, I have the option. Okay, leagues and teams and divisions still don't have that option, but registration forms and things do. So you're able to place your certain items that might end up with a drop down in your menu in a different way. The way that these are going to behave, I'll go out here, and I've got. I wouldn't do this if it was really my live site. I have divisions listed here. I also have standings listed here. And if you'll notice, they're basically the same thing. So I have some where I don't have standings necessarily, but I'm really, if I select hockey, and I go to standings, it's taking me to hockey standings for all of the hockey organizations or hockey divisions that I have on my multi-sport site. If I go to hockey over here, I pick the division, but then I'm still going to land on the same standings pages for whatever is kind of current. I don't know if there's any standings in here to look at. Where am I? Major midget. Yeah, I don't use that one very often. So let's go to women. So I'm still going to land on the standings page. So it really is a little bit of wasted space for me to have both divisions and standings. So one of my big tips is if you do host divisions or leagues, whatever you call them, where you're maintaining this standings page, you've got a combination of settings that are going to allow you to really streamline the navigation. When I have my divisions listed for hockey, and I select hockey, I have all of these divisions, and I can order these divisions the way that I want from top to bottom. And I can also order where I want divisions to be placed over here. I can also combine and move around some different things. Like I've got actually 2 menu groups for hockey right now, and I don't need 2 menu groups. So there's a way that I would want to consolidate how I have my divisions listed. Teams is going to be another one. Teams is another great example where you might want them grouped into a way that's easy for people to find their team or their division. Most of the time, what I see is boys listed by age, usually youngest to oldest, and then girls, youngest to oldest. Or you might want age categories with, girls then boys, or co-ed. So there's lots of different ways that you might want to organize those things. But now, how do I do that, right? So it's going to be a combination of things. It's a combination of using the setting you want here. So if I'm a league or a tournament, I'm going to probably want divisions to be in my menu, or I'm going to want leagues to be in my menu. By virtue of having those in my menu, standings is already going to be part of those menus. And we'll look at that in just a moment. If I have rep teams, I do want to treat those separately as from where I would be managing my division. So rep teams being their games are hosted by someone else, and I'm just their practice schedule and their game schedule is what I want. But then divisions is when you're managing the standings as well. So we're going to hop out and go to the schedule side just so we can see how can I manipulate the way those menu groups work. So in my schedules, I'm going to have association teams and leagues here. So I'm going to click on leagues first. And you can see here all of the menu groups. So this volleyball, soccer, hockey, that's exactly what we're looking at when we see this volleyball, soccer, hockey, and so on. So how can I make things move around? I can move things by editing them, editing a division and moving it to a new menu group. And I can also, as you can see here, I can order the leagues within, and then I can order the groups themselves, just like I could order my web pages. So I have one that's a bit of a straggler down here. I have this U11C hockey that is in its own menu group by itself. I don't want that. I want it to be with the other one. So I'm going to edit this. And when I use this, because I'm multi-sport, I do have this sport field. If you're not a multi-sport organization, it just knows what sport you are. But now I'm going to open this drop down and see that I want to actually place it in this menu group here that's right underneath soccer. So when I select that and I save my change, now I'm going to have all of my hockey divisions in one menu group instead of having it in two separate menu groups. So here's my U11C. But now maybe I want to order this a little differently because I've got everything all jumbled up here, all the different age groups. So let me click to order them and we'll see how I can order them. So I want my young kids up at the top. We'll look at U15, major midget. Novice would probably go way up here too. And my senior men's and women's can go down at the bottom. And when I save that league order, it's going to impact all of the places where that league order is used. That's going to actually include your admin control panel, which is really convenient because sometimes you want things to be listed in a certain way here so that it's just easier for you to find what you're looking for. So you can see that that menu order impacted immediately this menu. And as I refresh over here, it's going to impact that menu as well. So if I go to hockey, now we can see this is reflecting the same menu order. I'm going to hop over to the silver layout just so we can see a very similar thing here. So we have menu groupings where OHJL is here. Tournament divisions is a menu grouping and has these three divisions in it. So you can see how organizing your teams or leagues into their menu groups in a way that makes sense and just provides a really nice order of things is going to really help out when folks are looking for stuff. Now that we've done that, I can order my groups as well. If maybe I want hockey to be first on my list, or maybe I want lacrosse to be up there as well. Maybe the order of the divisions and menu groupings that make sense to you. You can update that menu group listing as well. And again, this reflects automatically that now hockey is the first thing that I see in my list. When you have your leagues and teams in your menu, there are some things that will happen by default. So again, I'm going to click on women and it's going to take me to my standings. I've chosen that the landing page, when you click a league or a division, is going to take you to standings. When it comes to rep teams, I've chosen that it's going to take you directly to the team schedule. You might want that to go to news or some other item. So let's see how we can manipulate that. So now that we've got our menu groups in the order that we want, I'm going to just go back out to my master menu, which I can do by clicking the Goalline icon anytime. I can click directly on a website menu group and bring that up as well, because I want to look at our site configuration tool. Site configuration has all kinds of settings in it. It's a little overwhelming, so don't freak out. It's a little overwhelming. There's a few things in here that you might want to look at, but I would say, generally speaking, once you have done site configuration really thoroughly, you probably will never return to this tool unless you have the silver layout and want to change some items. And we'll take a look at that in just another moment here. So we can see here I can add a bunch of things. Really what I want to call out for this particular thing before we move on too much is, and now my site is a little messy because I've got a lot more modules that are turned on. But what we see here is, what are we going to have in our menu? Put teams or leagues under the divisions menu. If you are an organization that has house leagues and rep teams that play outside, you want to make a choice here. Which one is the primary is kind of what I always think of, but your choice here is going to be, should it be your league groupings or should it be your teams groupings? And that's going to impact when you select divisions from your standard menu settings. Will it be divisions and menu groupings for teams or division menu groupings for leagues? You can always display both in your menu, but only one of them can be what the label of divisions is going to be. So the default in my case happens to be leagues, and the default in general, depending on what kind of organization you are, is going to be set when your organization gets started with Goalline. So the default is generally the right option, but if you wanted to change that because now you've expanded, you've grown as an organization, and you want to change it up, you can come in and make a specific selection. For me, divisions is my league listing. Then when it comes to what is going to be the homepage, when you land on leagues, what should you see? You can go to league standings, news, or the schedule. I always find that league standings is really what people want to see anyway when they're going to the league menu. So that's what I have set as the default. And I always tell folks, if you don't create league specific news articles, then you never want it to go to news, because if there's nothing to see, the last thing you want is people to land on pages that just have no content to display. And then the schedule is not a very common one for league landing pages, just because the schedule for a league is going to have lots and lots of teams, and it might not be super relevant. That being said, the team default should be generally team schedule. Your options there are news or team schedule. And again, if you don't create team specific news articles, you never want it to be that as a landing page. You can also control how that team schedule defaults. Is it a list or is it a calendar? Team schedules can have this as a default for the calendar view. League schedules can only have a default of list view. And that's just because there's so much potential for there to be numerous items on any given day that it's not an ideal calendar display. But team schedules can be the calendar view, which is what we see here. Your site visitors can always switch to whatever view they would prefer to have. I don't have a whole lot going on in my schedule right now, but that team schedule can be defaulted to a calendar view. And again, this you can kind of get the idea that once you've set these, you're not really going to want to change it too frequently. There are a bunch of other things in here that you might want to review. This is where you would set things like referee email reminders if you're using the referee system. You would turn on suspension or transfer tools if you're using registration and want to have transfers and approvals and things like that. It's how you control a little bit of what those left modules, or sorry, right modules are going to show. And some of that's only really applicable to your gold layout, because your silver layout has a different tool to manage some of those things. You should have the ability to turn on team or association wide photo galleries in here. This is how you're going to control whether or not it is available as an item. So if I turn off association photo galleries in site configuration, when I go to my standard menu settings, it's not going to be there anymore as an option for me to place in my my menu. So now if I go to website and I select that standard menu settings, because I have disabled the association wide photo gallery, I'm not going to be able to select that. So where's that standard menu settings? And now we can see there that photo gallery is not in my list anymore as an option for me to place in my menu. Some other things you may not see. So the officials login and the registration options are only options that are available if you actually have those modules enabled. Not every single Goalline site is using the officials tools or using registration. So if you don't see those in your menu, it's just because they're not enabled for you. If you are using registration and you don't see some of these options, definitely reach out so we can make sure to get that enabled for you. So that is going to cover how we get our items in our menu and how you configure some of those standard settings and your standard menu items. We'll hop back into that tool in, actually, you know what, let's do that right now. So I'm going to go back into site configuration. This is kind of the last difference between the gold and the silver layouts. The gold layout, as I mentioned, has our let's go back to the home page here. The format of the gold layout on the home page is that we have our news slider and then 3 call out boxes down here. To manage the callout box content, you're going to go to site configuration and you're just going to scroll down to where you find those items. So we can see here, I've got my referee login here. I'm using the image upload with text option, which just means it's whatever picture I chose, and it's going to link to whatever I want to link it to from this dropdown. And this dropdown includes all of your Goalline standard items and any of your user created web pages, including pages that were not set to show on the menu. So as I mentioned earlier, lots of ways for you to get access to that content in whatever way you would prefer. And then if I want teaser text, I can put that teaser text in. So I have it as referee login. Lots of organizations have some really graphics savvy folks who can create graphics that maybe have those words on them. So if you had a nice whistle graphic that said ref login right embedded into the image, you don't need the teaser text at all. It just kind of helps put that content over top. So you can create that teaser text or header if you need it. If you don't need it because it's part of the image, then even better. It kind of looks really nice when you do it that way. So creating a graphic that fits in here is really nice and helpful. I have some news here and an RSS feed pulling into my callout boxes. And the way that I do that is, again, select the type that I want. I've selected RSS feed, and then I found an RSS feed that I would like for that to go to. RSS feeds are available for Goalline sites. So this one here is actually linking to a Goalline site. And when you do use RSS feeds, if I click on this item, it's going to take me to that news article on that other Goalline site that I happen to select it from. It doesn't have to be a Goalline site RSS feed. It can be from other news. It can be external. A lot of folks would use it to, put their governing bodies news, even if that's not using a Goalline site. Other options are to be news articles that would just place there as you create news articles, next event or upcoming events, latest scores, upcoming games, upcoming practices, tonight's games being just today's games, which is different from upcoming. So upcoming games is going to show you the next 10 upcoming games. Tonight's games is only going to show you games that are today. And then the image upload with text option, as I mentioned. So that's how you're going to configure your callout boxes on your gold layout. In the silver layout, there's a lot more flexibility. But again, once you've really done your initial configuration, you're probably not going to hop in and change too much about it. So let's just get to that tool over here and take a quick peek. So with site configuration on a silver layout, there's just this additional box up at the top, or box button at the top to launch your homepage customization tool. When you launch this, it's going to show you what your site looks like. And as you move around in here, when you hover over things, you can interact with it. It's going to turn green if you can interact with it. So if I want to change the background image, I click on it and it pops up. I can upload my new file and save it, and away we go. And now I've got a new background image. Let's change the background image. Why not? So there we go. And then when it comes to ads, I can change what ads are going to display in here if I have multiple ads to choose from. You can also take a look at all these other modules. If your scrolling game center is going to be empty because it's the off season, maybe you want to hop in and just say, you know what, let's just not display that for now. So it won't show up on the site. It's just going to show as disabled in here, but it's just going to go away on the public side. Again, lots of modules here, and they're all going to be, similar options. You can include a Facebook or a Twitter widget. You can embed YouTube videos just using the options that are over here on the right-hand side. So if let's see, move those out of the way. So my communication tools options here, I can choose to place specific news articles, or I can do, I want the next event to pop up in there. So that this would display our next upcoming event instead of upcoming games. And all I did was drag that over and drop it in. My Twitter feed, my Facebook page, that kind of thing. Recent scores, I can do the same thing. That's what's in over here. So I just drag and drop it and put it where I want. And then you'll see all kinds of options here for statistics, as I mentioned right at the top. So points leaders, I've got lots of divisions. So you can select your divisions from here. So if I want to have my U15 points leaders over here, I can do that. And it will automatically start to populate. Now, actually, because I have a lot, I want more than just 4 of these boxes. I want 8 of them. So I'm going to hit that I want a 2x4 grid instead of just 4 rows. So now I've got more places where I can put in those points leaders. So if I come over here again, get to my points leaders, I want U15 AAA, I want U16 AAA. Let's have our let's see, U13 Boys B. And so that way, as you schedule and report games, all this content is just going to keep updating itself over and over and keep itself up to date, nice and fresh. So as you report all of the games that have statistics, those statistics are going to accumulate. Obviously, if you don't track individual statistics, this might not work for you, but it is a really neat way for you to configure your homepage so that you have lots of content that you don't actually have to spend any time really working on. So I just saved those changes, and in real time, we're just going to see how quickly this is going to look like a brand new site for us. So new background image, scrolling game center went away, got some points leaders up here, and I can click through and I can actually go and look in more depth at the U15A stats leaders and so on. So there's lots of really fun stuff that you can do with your Goalline site. Just taking a quick look, I think I covered everything, and I am just 30 or 40 seconds over my time today. So that's actually about 7 minutes better than usual. So your website tips and tricks, my most important tip is for sure to create at least one good web page that can be a catch for a lot of your standard information. Remember that you have the ability to rename standard items so that they are your organization's preferred terminology, executive to board, for example, news archives to old news, whatever makes sense to you, and to manage your call out boxes with something that is going to have really good persistence over time, meaning that it won't ever need to change, or it is a module that just updates all by itself because of all the other day-to-day stuff that you're going to be doing. And then my last big tip is going to be really keep in mind how you want your division and league groupings to be, and remember that you can reorder them left to right, you can reorder them up and down, and you can really just control how exactly your entire site is going to be navigated from start to finish. So I really hope that those tips and tricks are going to help you out when it comes to navigating your site. As I mentioned a couple of times, if there's anything you saw in today's webinar that doesn't seem to be available to you, reach out to our Goalline support team and let us know, and we can either enable that feature, or maybe it means a layout change for you. Maybe you like that silver layout and you want to go and have that going forward. So you can get started by talking to our support team, and we can get you moving for that kind of thing as well. So thanks again for spending some time with me this afternoon. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to our next one in a couple of weeks' time, and be on the lookout for another invitation soon.